Welcome to Elizabeth's Stories. Today we follow Margaret Thompson, a 64-year-old widow humiliated by her daughter-in-law who uncovers a criminal network, protects her family, and discovers her inner strength. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos revealing gripping truths. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the story. The snow fell in soft whispers outside David's house, blanketing the world in a hush that felt like a secret waiting to be told. Inside, the glow of Christmas lights bathed the dining room in gold, their warmth a stark contrast to the chill creeping into my bones. I sat at the edge of the long mahogany table, my table, the one I'd paid for when David and Jessica couldn't afford it, watching the family I had stitched together with my own sacrifices. At 64, I thought I'd earned a quiet kind of peace, a seat at the table where love was served without strings. I was wrong. The room buzzed with laughter, the clink of wine glasses, and the chatter of aunts, uncles, and cousins who'd gathered for the annual Christmas dinner. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, flitted about like a queen in her castle, her auburn hair catching the light as she arranged platters of food she hadn't cooked. The decorations were extravagant crystal snowflakes dangling from the chandelier, velvet ribbons curling around the banisters, all bought with my money. 2 years ago, when David's business faltered and Jessica's wellness journey drained their savings, I stepped in. Mortgage payments, car loans, credit card bills. I covered them all, not out of obligation, but because I wanted my son to stand tall. Jessica never thanked me, but I swallowed my pride. Happy wife, happy life, as Robert used to say, before he left me a widow alone in a world too big for one. Tonight, though, something felt off. The air carried a weight like the moment before a storm breaks. Jessica's smiles were too sharp, her glances too deliberate. I caught her watching me across the table, her green eyes glinting with something I couldn't name, something that made my skin prickle. I brushed it aside, chalking it up to holiday nerves. After all, I was just Margaret, the grieving widow who wrote checks to keep the family afloat. What threat could I possibly pose? The meal progressed in a blur of roasted turkey and spiced wine. I sipped my water, listening to Cousin Ellen recount her trip to Paris when Jessica stood her wine glass raised like a scepter. The room quieted, all eyes turning to her. She was radiant, her silk dress shimmering, her voice honeyed but edged with steel. I want to thank everyone for being here. She began, her gaze sweeping the table before settling on me. Family is everything, isn't it? Especially for those who have nowhere else to go. The words hung in the air, deceptively sweet. I felt a stir of unease, but I smiled, nodding as if she'd said something kind. Her lips curved into a smirk, and her eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. We're so blessed to open our hearts and home to those in need, she continued, her voice dripping with false warmth. Margaret, we know how lonely you've been since Robert passed. Honestly, if it wasn't for pity, no one would have invited you anywhere for the holidays. The room froze. Forks clattered against plates. Aunt Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. David, seated beside Jessica, stared at his plate, his knuckles white around his glass. The silence was suffocating, every pair of eyes darting to me, waiting for my reaction. I felt the weight of their stares, the sting of Jessica's words slicing through the fragile armor I'd built since Robert's death. Pity. She'd reduced me to a charity case a lonely old woman tolerated out of obligation. Inside, something snapped not with a crack, but with a slow, molten shift, like ice melting to reveal fire beneath. I raised my water glass, my hand steady despite the storm in my chest. How thoughtful of you, Jessica. I said, my voice calm, almost serene. I'm truly grateful for your honesty. Her smirk faltered just for a moment, as if she'd expected tears or shame. Instead, I smiled a smile I'd learned from years of hiding pain, and the room exhaled conversations stumbling back to life. But I was no longer part of it. My mind was elsewhere, racing, calculating. Jessica's words weren't just cruel. They were a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at my feet. And I was done playing the fool. Dinner passed in a haze. Jessica played the gracious hostess, laughing too loudly, refilling glasses with a flourish. I watched her, noting the way she avoided my gaze, the way David's shoulders hunched, as if he carried a secret too heavy to share. When the evening ended, I drove home through the snow, the quiet of my car a stark contrast to the noise in my head. My house, once filled with Robert's laughter, felt like a mausoleum, cold, empty, but mine. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop glowing in the dark, and began to unravel the threads of Jessica's betrayal. For 2 years, I'd been their silent benefactor. Over $189,000 by my last count, mortgage payments, car loans, Jessica's endless yoga retreats and spa treatments. I'd done it for David to spare him the shame of failure, to give him the life he deserved. But Jessica, she'd taken my generosity and twisted it into a weapon, wielding it to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. Why? The question gnawed at me, a shadow moving just out of sight. There was something deliberate in her cruelty, something calculated, as if she wanted me to feel small, insignificant. But why? I opened my banking app, my fingers trembling, not with fear, but with resolve. The accounts tied to David and Jessica's expenses stared back at me, automatic transfers I'd set up to keep their lives afloat. I hovered over the cancel button, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my power. I clicked one by one, freezing every payment. Mortgage, car, credit cards, all severed with a press of a key. The screen confirmed my actions, and I leaned back, a strange calm settling over me. Jessica wanted to play games. Fine, I'd play too. The next morning, my phone rang at 8 a.m. David's name flashed on the screen, his voice crackling with panic when I answered. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" The mortgage payment bounced. The bank called at 7 this morning. "Jessica's losing it." I sipped my coffee, watching the snow drift past my kitchen window. "Good morning, David. How was your Boxing Day?" "Don't play games with me," he snapped, sounding like the teenager who'd once begged for a new bike. "This could ruin our credit." "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," I said, my voice steady. After yesterday's dinner conversation, it seemed like the responsible thing to do. There was a long pause, the kind that carries the weight of unspoken truths. "You're doing this because of what Jessica said," he asked, his tone softer, almost pleading. "Do you remember what she said, David?" I asked, letting the question hang. "That no one would invite me if it wasn't for pity." Another silence, heavier this time. I could almost see him, head bowed, searching for an excuse. "She was just trying to be funny, Mom. You know how Jessica is. Funny." The word landed like a stone in my chest. I knew exactly how Jessica was manipulative, entitled, and now apparently foolish enough to think I'd let her words slide. "Funny," I repeated, my voice sharp. "That's an interesting way to describe public humiliation. Tell me, David, did you think it was funny?" He didn't answer. Of course he didn't. My son, my only child, had sat there like a statue while his wife tore me apart. I'd raised him to be better than that, but love, or whatever he thought he had with Jessica, had blinded him. "Come over for lunch," he said finally. "Jessica wants to apologize." I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. "No, thank you. But tell Jessica I appreciate the thought." I hung up before he could argue, my heart racing with a fire I hadn't felt in years. Jessica's apology was a trap, a way to smooth things over and keep the money flowing. But I wasn't the same Margaret who'd written checks to avoid conflict. Not anymore. As the day unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica's words were more than a cruel jab. There was something beneath them, a thread of intent I couldn't yet see. I opened my laptop again, pulling up old emails from David searching for clues. Jessica had always been vague about her past, something about a complicated family situation that David, ever the knight in shining armor, never questioned. But I wasn't David. I had resources, and now I had motivation. I found an online private investigation service, the kind that promised discretion and results for a price. 800 for a comprehensive background check within 72 hours. I sent the payment without hesitation, my fingers steady now. If Jessica was hiding something, I'd find it. And if she thought she could humiliate me and walk away unscathed, she was about to learn who she was dealing with. That night, as I sat in my quiet house, the snow piling higher outside, I felt a shift inside me. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, fiercer, like a long dormant part of me waking up. Robert used to call me his quiet storm, a woman who loved softly but fought fiercely when pushed. I'd forgotten that part of myself, buried it under grief and loneliness. But Jessica's smirk, her calculated cruelty, had cracked the surface, and something powerful was rising. I poured myself a glass of wine, the same brand Jessica had raised in her mocking toast. As I sipped, I made a silent vow I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to unravel Jessica's secrets, protect my son, and reclaim the woman I'd been before grief made me small. The game had begun, and I was no longer playing by her rules. The snow hadn't stopped falling since Christmas, as if the world itself was trying to bury the sting of Jessica's words under a blanket of white. My house, once a sanctuary filled with Robert's warmth, now felt like a fortress I was arming for war. The laptop on my kitchen table glowed like a beacon in the pre-dawn dark, its screen displaying the confirmation email from the private investigation service. 800 for a comprehensive background check on Jessica Marie Coleman, results promised within 72 hours. I'd sent the payment without a second thought, driven by a fire I hadn't felt in years. Jessica's smirk at that Christmas dinner wasn't just cruel, it was a mask hiding something far darker. I was going to find out what. The days after the dinner were quiet. Too quiet, like the hush before a predator strikes. David called again the next morning, his voice a mix of frustration and desperation. "Mom, you've got to fix this," he said, his words clipped through the phone. "The bank's threatening to start foreclosure if we don't catch up on the mortgage. Jessica's a wreck." She didn't mean what she said. I stood at my kitchen window watching the snow swirl in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like whispers of secrets encoded in the wind. "Didn't mean it." I repeated my voice, low, steady. She stood in front of our entire family, David, and called me a pity case. You sat there and said nothing. He went silent, the kind of silence that carries guilt like a weight. I could picture him, my boy, his broad shoulders slumped, his blue eyes avoiding the truth. "She was stressed, Mom. You know how she gets. Can you just turn the payments back on, for me, for him, always for him?" I'd spent 2 years pouring money into his life, $180,000, by my last tally, to keep him from feeling the failure I knew he feared. But Jessica's words had cracked something open inside me, and I wasn't about to let it close again. "No, David," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "Not this time. If Jessica wants to apologize, she can come here herself. Mom, please, I have to go." I cut him off, hanging up before the guilt could pull me back. I wasn't the same Margaret who'd written checks to keep the peace. Something was stirring inside me, something ancient and fierce, like a long-forgotten song rising from the depths. I didn't know what it was yet, but it felt like power. I turned back to my laptop, pulling up the financial records I'd kept for David and Jessica. The numbers were staggering: $90 and $1,000 for their mortgage, $30,000 for their cars, $60,000 for credit cards, and Jessica's endless wellness pursuits: yoga retreats, spa treatments, spiritual workshops that cost thousands, but never seemed to bring her any closer to finding herself. I'd been funding their entire existence, and Jessica had repaid me with scorn. Why? The question gnawed at me, a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. There was something deliberate in her cruelty, something that felt less like personal spite and more like a calculated move in a game I didn't yet understand. That afternoon, I drove to the local library, a place where I'd once spent hours with Robert, losing ourselves in books about history and mystery. The library was quiet, its shelves a labyrinth of secrets waiting to be uncovered. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I started with public records, searching for any trace of Jessica Marie Coleman. The internet yielded little. Her social media was a curated facade of yoga poses and inspirational quotes, nothing substantial. But as I scrolled through an old article about a wellness retreat she'd attended, a name caught my eye: Jake Morrison. A fleeting mention, a guest speaker who'd died in a hiking accident. The article didn't connect him to Jessica, but the coincidence sent a shiver down my spine like a cold finger tracing my back. I jotted down the name and kept searching my instincts, tingling with a certainty I couldn't explain. It was as if the air around me had thickened, charged with an unseen energy. I'd always been practical grounded, but since that Christmas dinner, I'd started noticing patterns in the snow, whispers in the wind, a sense that the world was watching, waiting for me to act. Maybe it was grief playing tricks, or maybe it was something more. Either way, I wasn't ignoring it. By the second day, the waiting was torture. I paced my house, the silence broken only by the creak of floorboards and the occasional hum of the heater. I kept expecting Jessica to show up all apologies and crocodile tears, but she didn't. Instead, David texted Jessica's "Sorry, Mom. Can we meet to talk?" I didn't reply. Let them sweat, I thought. Let them feel the weight of their choices. That night, I dreamed of Robert. He stood in our old garden, his face half hidden and by mist, his eyes kind but urgent. "You're stronger than you know, Maggie," he said, his voice echoing like a bell in the fog. "Look deeper. The truth is there." I woke with a start, my heart pounding the room dark, except for the faint glow of moonlight on the snow outside. The dream felt like a message, a nudge from beyond to keep digging. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I believed in Robert, and I wasn't about to let him down. The private investigator's email arrived on the third morning, a PDF attachment labeled "Confidential Jessica Marie Coleman." My hands shook as I opened it, not from fear, but from anticipation, like I was about to pull back a curtain on a stage I'd been blind to. The report was meticulous, spanning 20 pages of cold, hard facts that turned my blood to ice. Jessica wasn't who she claimed to be. She'd been married 3 times before David, not once, as she'd told him. Her first marriage at 19 was to Brad Williams, a small-town businessman. It ended after 2 years when she was caught siphoning money from his accounts. The divorce was messy with allegations of fraud, but Jessica walked away with a settlement and no charges. The second marriage to Marcus Hayes lasted 8 months. Marcus died in a single-car accident, leaving Jessica a $200,000 life insurance payout. The report noted suspicious circumstances, but no evidence to pursue. The third marriage was the one that stopped my heart. Jake Morrison, The name from the article had been her husband. They'd married quickly, and 18 months later, he died in a hiking accident in Colorado. The medical examiner's report mentioned inconsistencies, bruising. Inconsistent with a fall, a life insurance policy increased to $400,000 just months before his death. The insurance company investigated but couldn't prove foul play, and Jessica collected the money. My hands tightened around my coffee mug, the warmth doing nothing to thaw the chill, spreading through me. But the report held an even darker secret. Jessica had 2 children, Tyler and Mason Coleman, now 12 and 14 from her first marriage. She'd abandoned them 5 years ago, leaving them with their father, Brad, and owing $28,000 in back child support. David, who dreamed of starting a family, had no idea his wife had walked away from her own sons. The betrayal cut deeper than her words at Christmas. This wasn't just greed or malice. It was a pattern, a calculated dance of deception that left devastation in its wake. I sat back, my mind racing. Jessica wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. The air in my kitchen felt heavy, charged, as if the truth itself was pressing against the walls. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I swore I heard Robert's voice again, a faint whisper. "Keep going, Maggie. You're close." I shook it off, but the feeling lingered, a sense that I was on the edge of something vast and unseen. A puzzle with pieces I didn't yet understand. I called David that afternoon, my voice calm but firm. "You need to come over, alone. There's something you need to see." He arrived an hour later, looking like he hadn't slept. His hair was disheveled, his eyes shadowed with worry. "Mom, what's this about? Jessica's been crying all day. The bank's breathing down our necks." "Sit down," I said, sliding the investigator's report across the table. He eyed it warily as if it might bite. "Read it, David, all of it." He flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each one. "This can't be right." He muttered, his voice trembling. 3 marriages. She told me about one from college. A mistake. And children. She said she can't have kids because of endometriosis. She lied, I said, my voice cutting through his denial. About her marriages, her past, her children. She's been lying to you from the start. He shook his head, his hands gripping the papers so tightly they crumpled. "This is crazy, Mom. You're investigating my wife like she's some kind of criminal." "She is a criminal," I said, leaning forward. 3 husbands, 2 dead under suspicious circumstances, 2 children she abandoned. And you, David, what's her plan for you?" His face went white, his eyes darting to the report, as if it might rewrite itself. "You're saying she's—" "What?" "A murderer, I'm saying." "You need to open your eyes," I replied, softer now, but no less firm. "Jessica's been using you, using us, and I'm done letting her." He stood abruptly, pacing my kitchen like a caged animal. "This is too much. I need to talk to her. There has to be an explanation." "No," I said, my voice sharp enough to stop him in his tracks. "You can't tell her you know." "Not yet. If she's capable of what this report suggests. She's dangerous, David. To you, to me." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for the mother who'd always fixed his problems. But that mother was gone, replaced by someone new. Someone who saw the world clearly, who felt the stir of something powerful within her. "Come back tomorrow," I said, "alone. There's more you need to see." After he left, I sat in the dark. The investigator's report spread out before me like a map to a hidden world. The snow outside seemed to pulse with a rhythm I couldn't name, and for a moment I felt Robert's presence again, and not as a ghost, but as a spark in my blood urging me forward. Jessica had underestimated me, thinking I was just a lonely widow with a checkbook. But I was starting to understand something. The truth wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, and I was about to unlock a door she'd fought to keep closed. The air in my house felt different the morning after David read the investigator's report, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what came next. The snow outside had stopped, leaving a world so still it seemed to hum with secrets. I stood at my kitchen window, clutching a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, my mind replaying the look in David's eyes. Shock, denial, and something else. Something fragile, like the first crack in a dam before it bursts. He'd left last night, promising to return, but I wasn't sure he'd have the courage to face the truth again. Jessica's shadow loomed larger now, not just over my son, but over everything I thought I knew about my family. I'd spent the night poring over the investigator's report, each page a shard of glass, cutting deeper into the illusion Jessica had built. 3 marriages, 2 suspicious deaths, 2 abandoned children. It wasn't just a pattern, it was a plan, meticulous and cold. But why, David? Why us? The question pulsed in my veins, mingling with a strange energy I couldn't name, a force that had been growing since that Christmas dinner. It was as if the act of uncovering Jessica's lies had awakened something in me, a quiet storm, Robert used to call it, now stirring with a power that felt both ancient and new. David arrived just after noon, his face haggard, his jacket dusted with fresh snow that had started falling again, as if the sky couldn't decide whether to bury or reveal us. He didn't sit pacing my living room like a man caught between worlds. I talked to Jessica. He said, his voice low, almost a whisper. She denied everything, said the report is a lie, that you're trying to tear us apart. I set my mug down, the clink loud in the silence. And you believed her? He stopped pacing, his eyes meeting mine, full of conflict. I don't know what to believe, Mom. She's my wife. I love her. But those papers, he gestured to the report, still spread across my dining table, like a map to a nightmare. They're real, aren't they? They're real, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. And so are the children she abandoned. Tyler and Mason David. Your wife walked away from her own sons. He flinched, as if the words were a physical blow. She said she had a miscarriage in her 20s, that it broke her. She never mentioned kids. She lied, I said, stepping closer. She lied about her marriages, her past, her ability to have children. What else is she lying about? David, what's her plan for you? He sank onto the couch, his hands running through his hair. This is insane. She's not a monster. She cries at dog commercials. Mom, she's not a killer. I sat across from him, studying the son I'd raised to be kind. Trusting, too trusting. David, I need you to listen to me. Jessica's past isn't just a string of bad choices. It's a pattern. Men die around her, and she walks away richer. You're not safe. He looked up, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment I saw the boy who'd clung to me after nightmares, begging for reassurance. But I wasn't here to comfort him now. I was here to save him. What do you want me to do? He asked. Finally, his voice breaking. I want you to help me find the truth, I said. Not for me, but for you, for Tyler and Mason, for the men who didn't get a chance to fight back. He nodded, a small, reluctant gesture, but it was enough. The crack in the dam was widening, and I could feel the truth rushing closer, dark and unstoppable. That evening, my phone rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. I hesitated, my pulse quickening, a faint hum in the air like static before a storm. I answered, and a young voice, too old for its years, came through. Mrs. Thompson, this is Tyler Coleman, Jessica's son. My heart stopped, the room tilting as if the floor had shifted. "Tyler," I said, steadying myself against the kitchen counter. "How did you find me?" My dad hired an investigator to track Mom down. He said, his voice steady but laced with fear. "We know she married your son. I got your number from a neighbor after calling David's house. I need to talk to you." The air grew heavier, charged with that same strange energy I'd felt before. It was as if the universe itself was nudging me forward, weaving threads I couldn't yet see. "Tyler, this is complicated. You should be talking to your father, not me." "I know, no," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But Dad doesn't understand how dangerous she is. She hurt us, Mrs. Thompson, me and Mason. When she got angry about money, she'd hit us, made us lie to people about who we were. She scared us." The words hit like a punch, each one a confirmation of the darkness I'd glimpsed in Jessica's eyes. "I'm so sorry, Tyler," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But why call me now? Because she's with your son," he said, urgency creeping in. "If she's doing to him what she did to us, to Jake, you need to stop her. Please, Jake." The name from the report, the husband who'd died on a hike. My blood ran cold, the hum in the air growing louder, almost a whisper, now urging me to act. "Tyler, I'm trying. But you and Mason need to stay safe. Don't contact her, no matter what." "I won't," he promised. "But Mrs. Thompson, she's not just mean. She's something else. Something wrong." The call ended, and I stood frozen, Tyler's words echoing in my mind. Something wrong. It wasn't just a figure of speech. It felt true, like a truth I'd been circling without seeing. The snow outside swirled in patterns that seemed to pulse, and for a moment I swore I saw Robert's silhouette in the flakes, his eyes urging me to keep going. I shook it off, but the feeling lingered, a sense that I was brushing against something larger than Jessica, something that thrived in shadows. I knew we couldn't handle this alone. The next morning, I called a contact from Robert's old law firm, a retired attorney with connections to federal agencies. Within hours, I was sitting in my living room with Agent Rebecca Stone, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, whose calm demeanor belied a mind that missed nothing. Beside her was Detective Sarah Martinez, a local officer with a reputation for tenacity. They spread the investigator's report across my coffee table, their faces grim as they read. "This is extensive," Agent Stone said, her pen tapping the page about Jake Morrison's death. 2 suspicious deaths, financial fraud, abandoned children. "It's a pattern, Mrs. Thompson, a dangerous one." I nodded, my hands clasped tightly to keep them from trembling. "What does it mean? Is Jessica a serial killer?" Stone exchanged a glance with Martinez, a silent conversation passing between them. "It's possible," Stone said carefully, "but patterns like this often point to something bigger. Organized crime, perhaps. Insurance fraud rings financial exploitation networks. We've seen cases where women like Jessica are operatives targeting wealthy men for profit." My stomach twisted, the air in the room growing heavy again, that strange hum returning. "You think she's part of something larger?" It's likely, Martinez said, her voice softer, but no less serious. "The insurance payouts, the abandoned children, the way she's integrated herself into your son's life. It's too calculated to be random. We need more evidence to confirm it." "What kind of evidence?" I asked, leaning forward. Stone's eyes met mine, assessing. "We need Jessica to incriminate herself, a recorded conversation ideally. But it's risky, Mrs. Thompson. If she suspects you're on to her, she could escalate." I thought of Tyler's voice, his fear, and the shadow in Jessica's eyes at Christmas. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, "but David needs to be part of this. He's her target." Stone nodded, her expression unreadable. We'll need his cooperation. Can you convince him I wasn't sure, but I had to try? That evening, David returned his face a mask of exhaustion and doubt. I laid out the plan. He'd wear a wire, engage Jessica in a conversation designed to draw out her secrets. The FBI would listen ready to act if she revealed anything incriminating. "This is crazy, Mom," he said, his voice shaking. "What if she's innocent? What if we're wrong?" "Then we'll know," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "But if we're right, David, and we do nothing, you could be next." He stared at me, the weight of my words settling over him like a shroud. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." The next evening, David went home, a tiny microphone hidden in his shirt collar, the FBI stationed in a van nearby. I sat in my kitchen, a secure line connected to Agent Stone, listening to every word. The air felt charged again, the snow outside, glowing faintly under the streetlights, as if the world itself was watching. I closed my eyes, and Robert's voice echoed in my mind. "Be careful, Maggie. She's not what she seems." David's voice came through the line, steady but strained. "Jessica, we need to talk about our future. I've been thinking about life insurance, estate planning, all that responsible stuff." There was a pause, then Jessica's laugh, too bright, too sharp. "That's sweet, honey. I've been thinking about that too, especially after what happened to poor Jake." My breath caught. Jake! She'd said his name, unprompted. Stone's voice crackled through my earpiece. "That's a slip. Keep him on it," Jake David asked, his voice casual but laced with tension. "You've never mentioned anyone named Jake." Another pause, longer this time, and I could almost hear Jessica's mind racing. "Did I say Jake?" She said, her laugh forced now. "I meant my friend's ex-husband. Such a sad story. But it was enough." Combined with the investigator's report and Tyler's testimony, it was a crack in her facade, a glimpse of the truth she'd fought to hide. The conversation continued, David steering her toward dangerous ground, but Jessica was careful, deflecting with practiced ease. When he returned to my house later, his face was pale, his hands shaking. "She lied to me," he said, collapsing onto my couch. "She's been lying this whole time." I sat beside him, my hand on his shoulder, but my mind was elsewhere, piecing together the puzzle. Jessica wasn't just a liar, she was a predator. And the FBI's theory about a larger network felt truer by the minute. The hum in the air grew louder, and for a moment I swore I saw the snow outside, shift-forming shapes that looked like faces watching, waiting. The next morning, Agent Stone called with an update that turned my blood to ice. "We've been digging into Jessica's financials," she said. "The $500,000 $1,000 bail she posted yesterday. It didn't come from her accounts. It came from an offshore shell company, one we've linked to a network responsible for at least 12 suspicious deaths across 6 states." I gripped the phone, the room spinning. What kind of network insurance fraud? Primarily, Stone said. Attractive women marry wealthy men, isolate them, increase their life insurance, then arrange accidents. Jessica fits the profile perfectly. Your son was her next target. The words hit like a physical blow, but they also ignited something inside me, a fire fierce and unyielding. Jessica wasn't just a threat to David. She was part of a machine that preyed on the vulnerable, a shadow stretching far beyond our family, and I was the one who'd started pulling at its threads. Mrs. Thompson Stone continued, "We're moving to arrest Jessica, but we need David to stay in place, act normal. If she suspects, he knows she could run, or worse." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I'll talk to him. But Agent Stone, what if she's not acting alone?" There was a pause, and when Stone spoke again, her voice was grim. "That's what we're afraid of. This network has resources, financial, legal, maybe even inside law enforcement. We're dealing with something bigger than we realized." As I hung up, the snow outside seemed to pulse again, the air thick with that strange energy. I closed my eyes, and Robert's voice came clearer this time. "You're stronger than they know, Maggie. Keep going." I didn't know if it was my imagination or something more, but it didn't matter. I was in this now, and I wasn't backing down. Jessica had picked the wrong widow to underestimate, and I was about to show her just how dangerous a quiet storm could be. The snow fell heavier now, each flake a silent conspirator in the tension that gripped my house. It was as if the world outside knew what was coming, cloaking itself in white to muffle the storm brewing within. I stood in my kitchen, the investigator's report still spread across the table like a battlefield map, its pages worn from my relentless study. Jessica's shadow loomed larger with every revelation. 3 marriages, 2 suspicious deaths, 2 abandoned children, and a network of unseen players pulling strings I couldn't yet see. But I wasn't the grieving widow she'd mocked at Christmas anymore. Something had awakened in me, a fire that burned hotter with each truth I uncovered, a quiet storm. Robert used to call it, now roaring to life. David had agreed to wear the wire, his reluctant nod, a fragile bridge between us. He'd returned to his house, the FBI's microphone hidden in his collar, while Agent Rebecca Stone and her team set up in a van 2 blocks away, their equipment humming with the promise of justice. I sat alone in my living room, a secure line connecting me to Stone, my heart pounding in rhythm with the snow's eerie pulse outside. The air felt charged, heavy with that strange energy I'd sensed since the investigation began, a hum, like whispers from a world just beyond my reach. I'd dreamed of Robert again last night, his face half hidden in mist, his voice urgent. "She's closer than you think, Maggie. Be ready." I didn't believe in ghosts, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was guiding me, his love a beacon in the dark. The plan was simple, but perilous. David would steer Jessica into a conversation about their future, probing for any hint of her past or her intentions. If she slipped, if she mentioned Jake Morrison or her plans for David, the FBI would have enough to arrest her. But simplicity in theory was chaos in practice. Jessica was no fool. She'd danced around the truth for years, weaving lies as effortlessly as she breathed. And if she sensed the trap, if she realized David was betraying her, there was no telling what she'd do. I listened through the secure line, Stone's voice a steady anchor. "He's in position," she said. "Stay calm, Mrs. Thompson. We're with you." David's voice came through strained but controlled. "Jessica, we need to talk. About us, about the future. I've been thinking about life insurance, planning ahead." There was a pause, the kind that stretches time into a taut wire. Then Jessica's laugh bright, but edged with something sharp like glass hidden in silk. "That's so responsible of you, honey. I've been thinking about that too, especially after what happened to poor Jake." My breath caught the name slicing through the air like a blade. Stone's voice crackled in my ear. "That's it. Keep him on it." Jake David asked, his tone and carefully casual. "You've never mentioned a Jake." Another pause, longer, heavier. I could almost see Jessica's green eyes narrowing, calculating. "Did I say Jake?" She said, her laugh forced, now brittle. "I meant my friend's ex-husband. Such a sad story. He died in an accident." But it was enough. A crack in her armor, a slip that tied her to the man who'd died on a Colorado trail, his life insurance fattening her bank account. David pressed his voice steady, despite the fear I knew he felt. "Accident. What kind?" "Oh, you know." Jessica said, her tone light but strained. "A hiking thing. People get careless. Anyway, let's talk about us. Life insurance is smart, David. We should increase yours just in case." Stone's voice cut in. "We've got her on intent. Keep going." But Jessica was slippery, redirecting the conversation with practiced ease, and soon David was back at my house, his face pale, his hands shaking. She didn't say much more, he said, collapsing onto my couch. But she's hiding something, Mom. I could feel it. I nodded, my mind racing. She's not just hiding something, David. She's part of something. Something big. The next morning, Agent Stone arrived at my house with Detective Sarah Martinez, their faces grim. The snow had stopped, but the air outside was heavy, the sky a bruised gray that mirrored my mood. They spread documents across my dining table, their voices low, urgent. "We've traced the bail money," Stone said, pointing to a financial record. The $500,000 Jessica posted came from an offshore account linked to a network we've been tracking for years. Insurance fraud, primarily. But it's bigger than that, at least 12 deaths across 6 states, all following the same pattern. Attractive women marry wealthy men, isolate them, increase their life insurance, then stage accidents. My heart thudded, the hum in the air growing louder, almost a voice now whispering warnings I couldn't quite hear. "And Jessica, she's one of their operatives," Martinez said. "Your son was her target." "Mrs. Thompson, but your involvement freezing the accounts, hiring the investigator threw her off. She's been slower than usual, which might have saved his life." The words landed like stones, each one sinking deeper into the truth I'd been circling. Jessica wasn't just a liar or a gold digger. She was a predator, part of a machine that fed on trust and spit out bodies. And I'd been funding her game thinking I was helping my son. The realization burned, but it also fueled the fire inside me, the storm that was no longer quiet. "What do we do now?" I asked. My voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. Stone's eyes met mine, assessing. "We need to move fast. Jessica's out on bail, and she knows you're digging. If she's desperate, she could act against David, against you." I thought of Tyler's voice, his fear, and the shadow in Jessica's eyes at Christmas. "Then we set a trap." I said the words, surprising me with their certainty. "Use me as bait." David, who'd been silent in the corner, stood abruptly. "No way, Mom. You're not putting yourself in danger." But I was already decided, the fire in my veins burning brighter. "David, she's already coming for us. If we don't act, she'll disappear, and this network will keep killing. I won't let that happen." Stone studied me, her expression a mix of respect and caution. "It's risky, Mrs. Thompson, but if you're willing, we can make it work. We'll wire your house with cameras, microphones, the works. You'll resume your routine, make her think you're vulnerable. When she moves, we'll be ready." David shook his head, his voice breaking. "This is insane. What if she hurts you?" I turned to him, my hand on his arm. "She won't, because I'm not the woman she thinks I am." The plan took shape over the next 2 days. My house transformed into a fortress disguised as a home. FBI technicians installed cameras so small they were invisible microphones hidden in light fixtures, panic buttons tucked into my pockets. The snow outside fell relentlessly, as if trying to bury us, but I felt strangely calm, anchored by that strange energy that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. I dreamed of Robert again, his voice clearer now. "You're stronger than her, Maggie. Trust yourself." Each time I woke, the dream lingered not as a memory, but as a presence urging me forward. David was a wreck, his guilt and fear warring with his trust in me. "I should be the one doing this," he said, pacing my living room the night before the trap. "She's my wife, and that's why it has to be me," I said. "She thinks I'm weak, David, an old widow she can manipulate. Let her think that. It's her mistake." He looked at me, his eyes searching for the mother who'd always fixed his problems. But I wasn't that mother anymore. I was Margaret Thompson, and I was ready to fight. The next evening, I sat in my living room, The lights low, the cameras watching. The FBI van was parked 2 blocks away. Stone's team monitoring every sound, every movement. I'd resumed my routine grocery shopping, library, volunteering, making myself visible. Predictable, a perfect target. The snow outside glowed under the streetlights, its patterns shifting in ways that seemed almost alive, whispering secrets I couldn't yet decipher. At 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face calm, checking the peephole. A young woman stood on my porch, wearing a delivery uniform, a package in her hands. "Delivery for Margaret Thompson," she called. "I need a signature." I pressed the panic button in my pocket, hearing the faint double beep that meant help was coming. "Just leave it on the porch," I said, my voice steady. "Company policy, ma'am," she replied. Her tone too polished, too practiced. Through the peephole, her eyes were wrong, too cold, too calculating for her young face. One moment, I said, moving to the kitchen window. Stone had told me the surveillance van would be visible from there, and it was exactly where it should be. I grabbed the kitchen knife David had insisted I keep handy and moved toward the back door following the emergency protocol. The door was locked, untouched, but when I returned to the living room, Jessica was there. She stood in the center of the room, her auburn hair darker shorter, her eyes wild with a hunger I hadn't seen before. She wore gloves, dark clothes, and held a small, efficient-looking gun. "Hello, Margaret," she said, her voice a venomous purr. Surprise. My heart pounded, but the fire inside me burned hotter. "Jessica," I said, my voice calm. "Breaking and entering now." She smiled, cold and threatening. "I didn't break anything. I've had a key to this house for months. David gave it to me for emergencies. I'd forgotten about that key given in the early days when we'd all pretended to be a family." The air grew heavier, the hum louder, almost a voice now. "Stay sharp, Maggie." I kept my eyes on her, my hand tightening around the knife hidden behind my back. "Where's your delivery girl? Rebecca's keeping your FBI friends busy with a gas leak 2 blocks away," Jessica said, circling the room like a predator. "We have about 20 minutes before they figure it out." "20 minutes for what?" I asked, my voice steady despite the gun in her hand. "To finish what I started," she said, her smile widening. "You destroyed my life, Margaret. My marriage, my future, my freedom. It's only fair I return the favor." She stepped closer, the gun steady, her eyes gleaming with a madness that felt almost otherworldly, as if something darker lived inside her. "You're going to have a tragic accident," she said. "A fall down your basement stairs, probably. So sad. David will be devastated, but I'll be there to comfort him." "You think he'll take you back after you're arrested for murder," I said, buying time. My eyes scanning for the cameras Stone had promised were watching. "I was never arrested for murder," she said, her voice smug. "Insurance fraud, maybe, but that's just a misunderstanding. My lawyer's very good." The hum in the air grew deafening, and for a moment I swore I saw Robert's silhouette in the corner, his eyes blazing with warning. I pushed the vision aside, focusing on Jessica. "There's something you should know, Jessica," I said, my voice low, deliberate. "What's that?" she asked, her smirk returning. "You're not nearly as smart as you think you are." I pointed to the camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. "Everything you've said since you walked in has been recorded and sent to FBI headquarters in real time." Her smile faltered, her eyes darting to the camera, then to others she hadn't noticed hidden in the room's shadows. "You cunning old witch," she hissed, her composure cracking. "You think you can outsmart me?" "I don't think," I said, stepping forward, the knife still hidden. I know. I've spent months learning Jessica. Turns out I'm very good at this. The front door burst open and Agent Stone stormed in with tactical officers, their weapons drawn. FBI, drop the weapon. Jessica spun her gun, firing wildly, the sound deafening in my small living room. I dove behind the couch, the knife clattering to the floor, my heart pounding as chaos erupted. When the noise stopped, Jessica was on the floor, handcuffed, her eyes burning with hatred as they met mine. "You think this is over?" she spat as they dragged her away. "My associates won't forget this." Stone helped me to my feet, her face grim but triumphant. "We got her confession, Mrs. Thompson. Attempted murder recorded in high definition. She's done." I nodded, my body trembling, but my spirit alight with that strange, fierce energy. The snow outside seemed to glow, its patterns shifting as if celebrating. I'd faced Jessica and won, but her final words echoed in my mind. My associates. This wasn't over. Not yet. The air in my house felt wrong, as if it had thickened overnight, pressing against my skin like a warning. The snow outside had slowed to a faint drift, each flake catching the moonlight in patterns that seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't quite hear. It had been 6 months since Jessica's arrest, 6 months since I'd faced her in my living room. Her gun pointed at my heart, her confession captured on FBI cameras. I'd thought it was over, that I'd outsmarted her, dismantled her lies, and protected my son. But the call from Agent Rebecca Stone this morning had shattered that illusion, her voice grim as she delivered the news Jessica was free. A legal technicality, Stone had explained her words, clipped with frustration. The cameras in my house, the ones that recorded Jessica's confession, had been installed without a proper warrant. A judge had ruled the evidence inadmissible, and Jessica's high-priced lawyer, funded by the same shadowy offshore accounts that paid her bail, had pounced. She walked out of jail yesterday, her smirk as sharp as ever, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and a fresh wave of fear. I stood in my kitchen staring at the phone as if it might ring again with better news. The hum in the air, that strange energy I'd felt since this began, was louder now, almost a voice urging me to stay vigilant. I'd dreamed of Robert again last night, his figure clearer in the mist, his eyes blazing with urgency. "She's not done, Maggie," he'd said, his voice echoing like a bell in the dark. "You're stronger than her. Keep fighting." I woke with my heart pounding, the dream lingering like a physical presence, as if Robert's love was woven into the fabric of my reality, guiding me through this nightmare. David arrived an hour later, his face pale, his hands trembling as he set a duffel bag on my couch. "She's gone, Mom," he said, his voice hollow. "Jessica cleared out her things last night. No note, no explanation, just gone." I nodded, my mind racing. "She's not gone, David. She's hiding. The FBI thinks she's still in contact with her network." He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "This can't be happening. I thought we were done with her. I thought we were safe." I sat beside him, my hand on his shoulder, but my heart was elsewhere, piecing together the puzzle. Jessica's release wasn't just a legal fluke. It was a move calculated and deliberate, like every step she'd taken since she entered our lives. The network Stone described, the one responsible for 12 deaths across 6 states, wasn't just a group of criminals. It was a machine oiled with money and influence, capable of bending the law to its will. And Jessica was its blade sharp and relentless. "We're not safe," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Not yet, but we will be." He looked up, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment I saw the boy who'd trusted me to fix his world. But I wasn't just his mother anymore. I was Margaret Thompson, the woman who'd faced a gun and one the woman who'd felt a fire awaken inside her, a quiet storm that refused to be silenced. "What do we do, Mom?" he asked, his voice breaking. "We stay one step ahead," I said. "The FBI's watching her, but we need to be ready. She'll come for us, David. For me." Agent Stone arrived that afternoon, her face etched with exhaustion, but her eyes sharp. Detective Sarah Martinez was with her, her notepad already open, her pen poised like a weapon. They spread documents across my dining table, maps and financial records that traced the network's tendrils across the country and beyond. The snow outside seemed to pulse again, its patterns shifting in ways that felt almost alive, as if the world was watching, waiting for my next move. "Jessica's gone underground," Stone said, pointing to a grainy photo of her leaving the courthouse. "We tracked her to a motel last night, but she slipped our surveillance this morning. She's good, Mrs. Thompson. Too good." I studied the photo, Jessica's auburn hair tucked under a cap, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses. There was something unnatural in her posture, a predatory grace that sent a shiver down my spine. "She's not doing this alone," I said, my voice low. "Her network, how far does it reach?" Stone exchanged a glance with Martinez, a silent warning passing between them. "Farther than we'd like," Stone admitted. "We've identified at least 30 operatives, mostly women working in pairs or small cells. They target wealthy men, isolate them, and drain their assets before eliminating them. But the network structure is murky. We suspect they have informants, possibly inside law enforcement." The words hit like a physical blow, the hum in the air growing louder, almost a scream now. I closed my eyes, and Robert's voice came again, sharp and clear. "Trust your instincts, Maggie. They're watching." I opened my eyes, my heart pounding. "You're saying someone in the FBI could be compromised?" "It's possible," Martinez said, her voice cautious. "We're keeping this operation in tight, but we can't rule it out. That's why we're putting you and David into protective custody." "No," I said, surprising myself with the force of the word. "Hiding won't stop her. She'll find us, or she'll disappear and start again somewhere else. We need to end this." David stood, his face pale but resolute. "Mom's right. I'm done running. Jessica used me, lied to me. I want her stopped." Stone studied us, her expression unreadable. "It's dangerous, Mrs. Thompson. If the network has informants, they'll know we're closing in. Jessica could come for you first. Then let her—" I said, the fire inside me burning brighter. "I'm not afraid of her." That night, my phone rang again, an unknown number flashing on the screen. I hesitated, the air thick with that strange energy, the snow outside glowing with an eerie light. I answered, and Tyler's voice came through, his fear palpable, even through the static. "Mrs. Thompson, it's me." Tyler. My heart clenched. His voice pulling me back to the boy who'd warned me about Jessica's darkness. "Tyler, are you okay? Where are you with my dad in hiding?" He said, his voice trembling. "But Mom, she called me. She knows where we are. She said she's coming for us, for you, for everyone who got in her way." The room spun, the hum in the air now a roar like a storm breaking free. "How does she know where you are?" I asked, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. "I don't know," he whispered. She said she has eyes everywhere. Ms. Thompson." She sounded different, like she's not herself anymore. I gripped the phone, Robert's voice echoing in my mind. "She's not what she seems. Tyler, listen to me. Stay with your dad. Don't answer her calls. I'm working with the FBI, and we're going to stop her." "Be careful," he said, his voice breaking. "She's not just Mom. She's something else." The call ended, and I stood frozen, Tyler's words sinking into me like stones. Something else. The phrase echoed the feeling I'd had since this began, The sense that Jessica was more than a woman, more than a criminal. The snow outside swirled in patterns that seemed to form faces' eyes watching from the dark, and for a moment I swore I saw Robert's silhouette again, his hand outstretched, urging me forward. I called Stone, immediately relaying Tyler's warning. "She's tracking them," I said. "If she knows where Tyler and Mason are, she could know about us too." Stone's voice was grim. "We're moving you and David to a safe house tonight. No arguments." But I wasn't ready to run. The fire inside me, that quiet storm, was no longer quiet. It was a force, a power I could feel in my bones, as if the universe itself was lending me its strength. "No," I said. "If she's coming for me, let her. We'll use it to draw her out." Stone hesitated, then sighed. "You're stubborn, Mrs. Thompson. But if you're serious, we'll need a better plan than last time. No mistakes." The safe house was a small, nondescript cabin on the edge of town, surrounded by snow-covered pines that seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. David and I moved in under cover of night FBI agents stationed in unmarked cars nearby. The interior was sparse: 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room with a single window overlooking the forest. But it was wired with cameras and microphones, every inch monitored by Stone's team. I felt like a soldier in a war I hadn't chosen, but one I was determined to win. David was restless, pacing the cabin's creaky floors. "This feels wrong, Mom," he said. "We're sitting ducks. We're bait." I corrected my voice, calm but firm. "Jessica thinks she's hunting us, but we're hunting her." He stopped, his eyes meeting mine, and for the first time I saw something new in them: respect not just for his mother, but for the woman I was becoming. "You've changed," he said quietly. "You're stronger." I smiled, a small, sad thing. "I had to, David. For you, for Tyler and Mason, for myself." That night, I couldn't sleep, the hum in the air too loud, the snow outside too bright. I sat by the window watching the flakes dance their patterns, forming shapes that seemed almost deliberate eyes, faces, warnings. Robert's voice came again, not in a dream, but in the quiet of my mind. "You're close, Maggie. Don't falter." I didn't know if it was him or my own intuition, but it didn't matter. I trusted it. The next morning, Stone called with a breakthrough. "We intercepted a message from Jessica to an unknown contact," she said. "She's planning to move against you soon, possibly within days. She thinks you're the key to dismantling her operation." I nodded, my heart steady despite the danger. "Then let's make sure she finds me." The plan was bolder, riskier than the last. I'd return to my house, resume my routine, and let Jessica believe I was alone, vulnerable. The FBI would monitor from a distance, their presence hidden, to avoid tipping off any informants in the network. David protested, his fear palpable, but I was resolute. "This ends now," I told him, "for all of us." Back in my house, the familiar walls felt different, as if they'd absorbed the tension of the past months. The snow outside was relentless, its patterns more vivid, almost alive. I went through the motions, cooking, reading, visiting the library, but my senses were sharp, every creak of the house a potential threat. The hum in the air was constant now, a companion guiding me like a lighthouse in a storm. 3 days later, my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered, my heart pounding, but my voice calm. "Hello, Margaret." Jessica's voice purred low and venomous. "You've been busy, haven't you? Digging into things that don't concern you." I gripped the phone, the fire inside me flaring. "You made them my concern, Jessica, when you came after my family." She laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine, not entirely human. "You think you're clever, old woman. But you're playing a game you can't win. Walk away, or I'll burn your world to the ground." "Come and try." I said, my voice steadied the storm inside me roaring. I'm right here. The line went dead, and the snow outside seemed to pulse its patterns, forming a single word in my mind. Now. I pressed the panic button in my pocket, alerting Stone's team. Jessica was coming, and I was ready. The snow fell in thick curtains outside my house, each flake a silent sentinel in the storm that had become my life. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the final move in a game I hadn't chosen, but was determined to win. Jessica's voice still echoed in my mind from her chilling phone call 2 nights ago. You're playing a game you can't win. But she was wrong. I'd already faced her once, stared down the barrel of her gun, and walked away. Now I was ready to end this, not just for David, not just for Tyler and Mason, but for the woman I'd become, the one whose quiet storm had grown into a force that could shatter empires. The FBI had tightened their net, but Jessica was a ghost slipping through their surveillance like smoke. Agent Rebecca Stone and Detective Sarah Martinez had spent the last 48 hours briefing me on the plan, their voices heavy with the weight of what we were up against. The network, Jessica's network, wasn't just a group of criminals. It was a hydra, its heads stretching across states and borders, fed by money fear and an almost unnatural cunning. Stone suspected they had informants inside law enforcement, maybe even the FBI itself, which explained how Jessica had known where Tyler and Mason were hiding. But I wasn't running anymore. I was the bait, the trap, the storm that would bring them down. The air in my house was thick with that strange energy I'd felt since this began, a hum that was now a chorus whispering secrets I could almost understand. And the snow outside pulsed with patterns that seemed alive, faces, eyes, warnings etched in white. I'd dreamed of Robert again last night, his figure no longer hidden in mist, but standing clear, his hand on my shoulder, his voice steady. You're ready, Maggie. Finish it. I woke with a fire in my chest, a certainty that whatever power was guiding me, Robert, my own intuition, or something older, was with me now, unyielding. David sat across from me at the kitchen table, his face pale, but resolute. I still think this is crazy, Mom, he said, his voice low. You shouldn't be the one risking your life. I have to be, I said, my hand resting on his. Jessica thinks I'm the weak link the old widow she can break. That's her mistake. And we're going to use it. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine, and for the first time, I saw not just fear, but pride. You're not like anyone else, are you? He said, a small smile breaking through. I don't know how you're doing this. I smiled back, the fire inside me burning brighter. Neither do I, David, but I'm doing it anyway. The plan was intricate, a chess game played in shadows. I'd return to my routine library visits, grocery runs, coffee at the corner cafe, making myself visible, vulnerable, a beacon for Jessica to follow. But my house was a fortress now, wired with cameras and microphones, so advanced they could capture a whisper from across the room. The FBI had set up a command post in a nearby warehouse, their presence hidden to avoid tipping off any informants. Stone had warned me Jessica wouldn't come alone this time. The network knew I was a threat, and they'd send muscle to silence me. I spent the day moving through town, my senses sharp, every glance a potential danger. The snow seemed to follow me, its patterns shifting in ways that felt deliberate, as if guiding me. At the library, I lingered over a book on ancient myths, my fingers tracing a story about a woman who faced a serpent and won her strength born from love and loss. The hum in the air grew louder, and for a moment I swore I saw Robert's reflection in the library window, his eyes urging me forward. I shook it off, but the feeling stayed, a certainty that I was on the right path. That evening, back at home, I sat in my living room, the lights low, the cameras watching. The FBI had given me a code word storm to signal if I needed immediate extraction. I wore a small pendant, a gift from Robert years ago, now fitted with a panic button. The snow outside glowed under the streetlights, its patterns forming shapes that seemed to whisper my name. I closed my eyes, centering myself, letting the fire inside me burn steady. Jessica was coming, and I was ready. At 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Willow Park. Midnight. Come alone. Or Tyler and Mason pay the price. My heart thudded, but the storm inside me roared louder. I forwarded the message to Stone, who called immediately. It's her, she said, her voice tense. We've got a team ready to move. Willow Park's remote, perfect for an ambush, but also perfect for us to control. Are you sure about this? Mrs. Thompson? I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. She thinks she's hunting me. Let's show her she's wrong. Willow Park was a frozen expanse on the edge of town, its trees skeletal under the snow, its paths winding through shadows that seemed to breathe. The FBI had swept the area, planting cameras in the trees, agents hidden in the surrounding woods. I arrived at 11:50 p.m., my coat heavy with the weight of the pendant and the knife David had insisted I carry. The snow fell in thick sheets, muffling sound, but the hum in the air was deafening now, a chorus of voices. Robert's my own, something older, urging me forward. I stood at the park's center, a clearing surrounded by pines, the snow glowing under a full moon. The air was electric, charged with that strange energy, and for a moment I swore I saw figures in the trees. Not agents, but something else, shadows that moved with purpose. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the plan. Jessica would come, and when she did, the FBI would close the net. At midnight, a figure emerged from the trees, her auburn hair catching the moonlight, her eyes gleaming with a hunger that wasn't entirely human. Jessica. But she wasn't alone. Two men flanked her, their faces hard, their hands in their pockets, no doubt concealing weapons. My heart pounded, but I stood my ground, the fire inside me blazing. Margaret Jessica said, her voice a venomous purr. You're predictable. I knew you'd come. You threatened children. I said, my voice calm but sharp. I had no choice. She laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine, like ice cracking under pressure. You're so noble, aren't you? The grieving widow saving the day. But you're out of your depth, old woman. One of the men stepped forward, his hand emerging with a gun. Enough talk, he growled. Hand over the evidence you've got, or this ends badly. I smiled, a slow, deliberate thing that made Jessica's eyes narrow. You mean the investigator's report? The recordings. They're not here. They're with the FBI, uploaded to a secure server the moment I got your text. Her smirk faltered, her eyes darting to the trees as if sensing the trap. You're lying, she said, but her voice wavered. Am I said, stepping closer, the pendant heavy against my chest. You've underestimated me from the start, Jessica. You thought I was just a lonely widow with a checkbook. But I've been watching, learning. And I'm not alone. The hum in the air surged, and for a moment I swore I saw Robert's figure in the snow, his eyes blazing with pride. Jessica's gaze followed mine, and her face paled as if she saw something too. What the hell is that? She whispered, her gun trembling in her hand. Before I could answer, the trees erupted with movement. FBI agents swarmed the clearing, their weapons drawn, their voices sharp. FBI, drop your weapons. The two men hesitated, then complied, their guns hitting the snow with dull thuds. But Jessica was faster, her instincts predatory. She lunged at me, Her gun raised, her eyes wild with rage. "Storm!" I shouted, pressing the pendant's button as I dove to the side. A shot rang out, the sound swallowed by the snow, and I hit the ground hard, my breath ragged. Agents tackled Jessica, her screams echoing as they pinned her to the snow, her gun skittering across the ice. Stone was at my side in an instant, helping me up. "You okay?" "Mrs. Thompson." I nodded, my heart pounding, but my spirit alight. "I'm fine. Did you get it?" Every word she said, her face grim but triumphant. She confessed to targeting David, to the network's plans, to everything. And her associates just gave us a gold mine. Jessica's screams grew louder as the agents cuffed her, her eyes locking onto mine, burning with a hatred that felt ancient, as if she were more than a woman, more than a criminal. "This isn't over." She spat, her voice low, almost a growl. "You'll never be safe." I stepped closer, the fire inside me, blazing, the hum in the air, a chorus of triumph. "You're wrong," I said. "You picked the wrong family to cross." As they dragged her away, the snow seemed to glow brighter, its patterns shifting into shapes of victory stars, circles, a hand reaching out. I swore I saw Robert's face one last time, his smile soft but proud before the snow settled, the hum fading to a whisper. Stone's team interrogated Jessica's associates that night, their confessions unraveling the network like a thread pulled from a tapestry. They named names, dates, locations, dozens of operatives, shell companies, and corrupt officials across 3 countries. The FBI launched raids within hours, arresting 27 people by dawn, with more to come. Jessica was the key, her arrogance and desperation leading us to the heart of the beast. Back at the safe house, David hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You did it, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved us." I held him, the fire inside me settling into a warm glow. "We saved each other," I said, knowing it was true. The storm had carried us through, and we were stronger for it. The courtroom was a sea of murmurs and muted light, the snow outside falling softly as if the world had finally exhaled. I sat in the front row, my hands folded in my lap, the pendant Robert gave me years ago, warm against my chest. Jessica stood before the judge, her auburn hair dull under the fluorescent lights, her eyes no longer gleaming with that predatory hunger, but hollow, defeated. The hum that had followed me through this ordeal, the strange, almost otherworldly energy that had guided me, was gone, now replaced by a quiet peace, like the stillness after a storm. I'd faced her, outsmarted her, and helped dismantle the network that had preyed on so many. But as I watched her, I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching relief that it was over. The judge's voice cut through the room, steady and final. "Jessica Marie Coleman, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and racketeering." The gavel fell, a sharp crack that echoed like a door slamming shut on her life. Jessica's head bowed, her shoulders trembling, but she didn't look at me, not even once. I wondered if she saw the faces in the snow, the shadows that had watched us in Willow Park, or if they'd been mine alone, a gift from Robert, or something older, guiding me through the dark. As the bailiff led her away, I caught a glimpse of her eyes, and for a moment I swore I saw something flicker, something not entirely human, something that vanished as quickly as it appeared. The air stirred a faint whisper of that familiar hum, but it was soft now, a goodbye. I stood my legs steady and walked out into the snow, the world bright and clean, as if it had been reborn with her conviction. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind, the pieces of my life falling into place like the final notes of a symphony. The FBI's raids, sparked by the confessions of Jessica's associates, had unraveled the network with breathtaking speed. 32 operatives were arrested across 12 states. Their shell companies seized, their corrupt informants exposed. The news dubbed it the Widow's Web, a nod to me, Margaret Thompson, the 64-year-old grandmother who'd brought down a criminal empire. I didn't care for the nickname. It made me sound like a spider when all I'd done was follow the fire inside me, the quiet storm Robert had always seen. The media descended like vultures, their cameras flashing outside my house, their questions relentless. I agreed to one interview with 60 Minutes because I wanted the world to hear the truth, not just about Jessica, but about the strength we all carry, the power to fight back when pushed too far. Sitting across from the reporter, I told my story, my voice steady, the pendant glinting under the studio lights. "Trust your instincts," I said, looking into the camera. "If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone make you feel small." The interview aired a month later, and my phone buzzed with messages from strangers, women mostly who'd been manipulated, dismissed, or underestimated, thanking me for showing them they could fight back. I read each one, my heart swelling with a purpose I hadn't known I needed. The snow outside my window no longer pulsed with patterns, but I felt Robert's presence in the quiet, his pride, a warmth that lingered in my bones. David was my anchor through it all, his transformation as profound as mine. He'd moved back into my house temporarily, the weight of Jessica's betrayal still heavy, but fading with each day. We spent evenings talking, really talking for the first time in years. He apologized for his silence at that Christmas dinner, for letting Jessica's lies blind him. "I didn't see you, Mom," he said one night, his voice thick with emotion. "Not really. I thought you were just Mom, but you're so much more." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "I'm still your mom, David, but I'm also me." It took me a while to remember that. He laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in too long, and I saw the man he was becoming stronger, wiser, no longer the boy who'd trusted too easily. He'd started dating Sarah, a kind-hearted schoolteacher who'd attended one of my library readings. She was the opposite of Jessica, gentle, genuine, with a laugh that filled the room with light. When David told me they were engaged, his eyes bright with hope, I felt a joy so deep it brought tears to my eyes. They were expecting a child, a girl, and David asked if they could name her Margaret. I nodded, too moved to speak the fire inside me, glowing with a warmth I hadn't known since Robert. Tyler and Mason came to visit a month after the trial, their father Brad driving them from their small town in Ohio. They stood on my porch, two boys who'd been through too much, their eyes wary but hopeful. Tyler, 14 now, was tall and lanky, his face a mix of defiance and vulnerability. Mason, 12, was quieter, his eyes wide as he took in my house, as if searching for traces of his mother's shadow. "Thank you," Tyler said, his voice steady but soft, "for stopping her, for saving us." I hugged them both, my heart aching for the years they'd lost, the pain Jessica had inflicted. "You saved yourselves," I said, "by being brave enough to tell me the truth." We spent the day together baking cookies in my kitchen, their laughter a balm for wounds I hadn't realized I carried. Tyler told me he wanted to be a counselor to help kids like him who'd been hurt by those they trusted. Mason, quieter but no less determined, said he wanted to teach to give others the stability he'd craved. I listened, my heart swelling with pride for these boys who'd chosen light over darkness, strength over surrender. As they left, Tyler handed me a drawing, a simple sketch of a woman standing in a storm, her arms outstretched, lightning crackling around her. "That's you," he said, his cheeks flushing. "You're like a superhero." I laughed, tucking the drawing into my pocket. "I'm just Margaret," I said. But as I watched them drive away, I felt the truth of his words. I wasn't a superhero, but I'd found a power inside me, a storm that had carried me through the impossible. The FBI invited me to consult on their training program, a chance to share what I'd learned about spotting financial exploitation, especially among the elderly. I spent weeks working with Stone and Martinez, crafting materials that would teach others to see the signs I'd missed: charm, that hid calculation, generosity, that masked manipulation. The work was grueling but fulfilling, each session a reminder that my fight hadn't just saved David and the boys. It had rippled outward, protecting countless others. One afternoon, as I left the FBI field office, Stone pulled me aside, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "You're remarkable, Mrs. Thompson," she said. "Most people would have crumbled under this. You didn't just survive, you changed the game." I smiled, the pendant warm against my chest. I had help. I said, thinking of Robert, of the snow, of the hum that had guided me. She didn't ask what I meant, but her nod told me she understood. A year after the trial, I stood in my garden, the one Robert and I had tended together, now blooming with roses and lavender under the spring sun. The snow was gone, replaced by a warmth that felt like a promise kept. David and Sarah's wedding was a week away, a small ceremony in this very garden with Tyler and Mason as ring bearers. I'd spent the morning planting new flowers, my hands deep in the earth, the pendant glinting in the sunlight. As I worked, I thought of the journey that had brought me here, the humiliation at Christmas, the fear of losing David, the fire that had awakened inside me. I'd faced a predator, dismantled a network, and found a strength I hadn't known I had. The hum was gone now, the snow silent, but Robert's presence lingered not as a ghost, but as a part of me woven into the woman I'd become. That evening, I sat on my porch, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. David joined me, his arm around Sarah, her laughter a melody that filled the air. Tyler and Mason were there too, chasing fireflies in the yard, their voices bright with hope. I looked at them, my family, and felt a peace so deep it was almost sacred. "You did this." "Mom," David said, his eyes meeting mine. "You brought us back together." I shook my head, smiling. "We did this. All of us." As the stars emerged, I felt the last traces of the storm settle, replaced by a quiet strength, a certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The world was brighter now, not because the darkness was gone, but because I'd learned to carry my own light.